Alright, welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude. And this is part 2 in the video of my completed models since I got back into the hobby as requested by Pete Baez. So let's take a look at the next batch. Okay, next up was this is the 1/35th scale Dragon models M7 Priest. And this is the first open top vehicle I've done, and it's also the first Dragon vehicle I've done. And I use the modulation technique on this one as well, and you can tell that it's darker down here and lighter up here, lighter on the upper surfaces, and you know, it works. And I like the way it turned out. It's kind of tricky in some spots because I'm not used to Dragon models, but it did work, and it turned out pretty nice. I've always wanted to build a Priest. I just never have had the opportunity, and I found this one online and decided to give it a go and build it, and you know, it turned out pretty nice. One thing I have to say about Dragon kits is they fit together very, very nicely. All of these panels up front are separate panels, and where the weld seams are, if you take your time, they fit together flawlessly with no gaps, no overlaps or anything like that. And the welds, if you place the cement properly, the welds end up looking like welds. Don't know if you can see that one there, but I mean, it just fit together really nicely. Really nice kit. You know, the interior, again, got it nice and weathered up. Just a really nice vehicle overall. Had a lot of fun building this one. Had a little bit of photo etch, not much, but you know, just a really nice kit, and I like the way it turned out. So that's the Dragon M7 Priest. Alright, next up is the old, like 1965 or something crazy like that, molding of Monogram's M29 Weasel amphibious vehicle. Now this is another nostalgia build, and it was a kit that I always wanted as a kid, but I never could find it. So I looked online, I found one for really cheap, and I got it with the sole purpose of seeing what I could do with a really old kit to make it look a little more realistic by doing some scratch building and modifications. And there are a lot on this kit. So as you can see, I did the windshield all nice and dirty. So the modifications I made to it were mostly in the rear of the vehicle. On top of the this compartment here, I replaced all the molded on handles with actual loop handles from my spares box. This part right here, this guard for the muffler, I scratch built from aluminum window screen and some brass strip. The rudders and all the associated linkage is all scratch built, just going off of photos, because the stuff that was on there was it was molded on. So basically this whole back deck I scratch built. The kit had molded on stuff, and I just, including the shovel, so I just scraped it all off and just scratch built all of it, including the rudders. And then I just used the kit figure, which is pretty wonky looking, but once he's painted up, it's not too bad, especially considering how old this kit is. So it turned out pretty good. Once, you know, did some pretty gnarly weathering, because being a amphibious vehicle, it's going to be covered with a lot more mud than some vehicles, so that's what I did. And I'm working on a base to put it on, because I do want to display it on a base, like trucking through some mud or whatever. But it was a fun kit. Did a lot of scratch building. I just knocked his canteen over, didn't even know that was in there. But you know, it was a fun kit to build, and I enjoyed all the scratch building, and just, you know, it turned out great for a kit that old and that simple. Okay, this kit here is the Tamiya 1/35th scale Panzer IV Ausführung D. This is an older kit, molded in the 70s, I believe. What did you say on the bottom? No, but I think it was molded in the 70s. But it's an old kit, but it's still a good kit. And I wanted to do. I've never done a vehicle in German gray, so this was my first one. And I did the figures on this one. Again, not the best, but they work pretty good because I really wanted to use all the figures in this one. Nothing real special on this one. This is pretty much just right out of the box. I didn't do anything extra, or I didn't really add anything to it. Just painted in this basic German gray. Used early war markings on it, and you know, came out pretty good for my first Panzer Gray vehicle. You know, dirtied it up with some dust. Didn't get all crazy with mud and everything else because you know, early in the war, during a dry season, whenever I modeled it, I can't remember the exact time, but turned out pretty good. So that's the Tamiya Panzerkampfwagen 4 Ausführung D. Alright, next up is the Tamiya 1/35 scale SDKFZ 251/9, which is a German vehicle, but as you can see, it is in Allied markings from World War II. What this is, there is a company called Kagero, and they have this Captured Panzers, German Vehicles in Allied Service book. It has painting schemes and decals in 3 scales for each scheme. So you get this nice decal sheet which has all the markings for the given vehicle, and these are actually based off of real vehicles that were captured during World War II by the Allies. And I'd seen this one. I bought the kit for something. I don't even remember what I bought it for, but I'd seen the kit in online, and it was in Holland, and it was a German half-track that was captured. German half-track with a 75mm gun that was captured by the British, and this is it right here. Whoops. That's it right there, and those are the markings that it had on it. And I'd seen it online, and I thought, you know what, that'd be pretty neat. And when I found this decal set, well, I figured I'll get that so I can do this scheme, and I'll have decals so I can do another captured vehicle. So what I did with this one is, as you can see, the inside is the German yellow. The outside is painted in olive green, since it's a British captured vehicle. And what I did was, using the hairspray technique for chipping paint, I chipped the paint all around to show a little bit of wear, not a whole lot, but a little bit of wear for the yellow to show through, mainly on high points and stuff like that. And it came out pretty good. Not quite as convincing as I had hoped, but I figured there would just be very little wear on a vehicle like this. And in the photo, it's not very weathered, it's not muddy or really very dirty. So that's what I went for. And on this one, I did, you know, this, I scratch built this machine gun pintle mount here because the British installed a 50 caliber machine gun in it. And then I added some personal stowage items, some blankets, tarps, a couple of jerry cans, and the tracks are AFV Club tracks, since these tracks were much better, much more nicely detailed than the kit offerings. So there was that one, the SDKFZ 251 capture vehicle. Okay, this next vehicle is the old Tamiya Panzerkampfwagen 2, and this was the first kit that I built in my Plastic Models for Beginners series. And my goal with this vehicle, if you remember, if you watched the other videos, was to build a kit straight from the box using the bare minimum of tools and supplies. And I did just a bare build with just the basic colors, and then in the next series on this particular kit I did weathering and some additional stuff. So that, it's an really old kit, and it actually still builds really well, and you can make it look decent. There's quite a few people building some of these right now online, but it turned out good, and it got pretty positive feedback for the first kit in the Plastic Models for Beginners series. But that is the Panzerkampfwagen Mark II, the really old mold. It's just a really old kit. So turned out pretty good, and it was a fun experience, going step by step and being kind of detailed in what I did and when and why, to get this result. So Panzerkampfwagen Mark II by Tamiya. Okay, next up was the Dragon 1/35 scale Stug 4 mid-production, and this was kind of a dual purpose build here. It was for a group build called Dead in Their Tracks, which was any vehicle, aircraft, weapon, whatever used for taking out armor, hence Dead in Their Tracks. And it was also a buddy build I did with Stevie Gibson. He did a Stug as well. Now this was my second Dragon kit, and again, I really enjoyed it. It went together really well. All these separate panels and everything, by paying attention and careful, doing a segment at a time, and using the cement right. There are no seams at all. All the welds went together really nicely. Tried a new product on the exhaust here, and got some nice texture and layered colors going on for the rust. Used some fuel and oil spill type stuff. Used some rust streaking effects. And this was my first kit using the Dragon Magic tracks, which are individual link tracks. They come in a bag. Each one of these links is an individual piece. You have to glue them all together, glue them all around the suspension and running gear. And I was kind of intimidated at first because of the stories I'd heard about the Magic tracks, and some people just have a real problem with them, and others just zing right through them. And I found my first experience with them. They worked out really well, and I would definitely use Magic tracks again. I like them. I like what you can do with them, and they turn out really nice. But this is the Stug buddy build with Stevie Gibson, group build, Dead in Their Tracks, and I like the way this one turned out. The Dragon kits are really nice to build, a lot more complex as far as parts count and stuff than Tamiya, but they work out really well. And there was some photo etch on this one, not a whole lot, but there was some, and it helps enhance the kit. But turned out, I like the way it turned out, and I had a really good time building it. I really like the Stug vehicles, and I want to build some more because I think they're just pretty neat looking vehicles. So that was the Dragon 1/35 scale Stug 4 mid-production. Alright, next up was my most recent completed vehicle kit, the Tamiya 1/35 scale Greyhound. And this is an older mold kit, but I think it's 98, I think. But it's a really nice kit. The nice thing is it has a decent interior, and typical Tamiya fashion. It fits together really well, and builds up nicely, and I like the way it turned out. Now, another nice thing is it does have an interior. As you can see, there's the gun. There's ammunition storage on the inside, and just pretty nice, interior. It's kind of basic, but there's also the interior in the hull with all the storage compartments. I added wiring, added a lot of rusty, dirty weathering in the floorboard. I even scratch built, even though you can't see them. I scratch built a couple of grab handles for the I guess you'd call him the co-driver or radio operator or whatever he is, to aid in getting out. It's something I saw in photos of the real vehicle, as well as I added the foot pedals. Can't see those, but they're in there. So this is a nice kit, and I did some stuff different on this one, just like I do on the other ones. In my quest for doing a little bit better with my modeling skills. I can't get the turret back on. One thing I did was, there we go, I added the wiring and stuff on the inside. I also got Archer dry transfers specifically for this vehicle, and I used them on the inside of the vehicle. It comes with gauges, gauge decal or dry transfers, storage transfers, just all kinds of stuff. The stars, and those worked out really nice. And then what else did I do? I did the figure on this one. Again, trying to get a little bit better at those. This one turned out okay. Let's see. Pretty much this one, other than that stuff I did to the interior, the exterior is pretty much out of the box. Now, one difference is I also worked some more on. I added some stuff on the inside, crew personal items, and just trying to perfect my painting of shading and highlighting and stuff, and it worked out. But this is the first kit that I did a couple of different things on. Number one, I tried a new product on this one, the Ultimate Modeling Products Clay Wash. I used that on this kit, and it gives a really nice built-up dust effect. I also used it, put it on a brush and kind of flipped it to get some actual paint splatter instead of just smears and stuff. Some splatter stuff, and it also works really well for weathering tires. For giving it the built-up dust in the tread and around the edges. Works out really good. It's a really good product, and that really opened up some doors on some other stuff I was doing. So it turned out pretty nice. I like this kit. Worked really well. I was originally intending to use this one for my second kit for the plastic models for beginners, but I ended up going with the other one. But because I want to do a lot of scratch building inside, and I didn't want to do that yet on the beginner series. But turned out really nice. Great kit. Really enjoyed building it. And that is the 1/35 scale Tamiya armored car Greyhound. The next kit I finished is the Eduard 1/48 scale BF 109E4. It's the Profi Pack edition, which means it comes with multiple marking options and photo etch parts, and just a lot more detail than the weekend edition of the same kit. This one I started some time ago, and I got kind of hung up on it for a little bit, but then I was able to get going again. Now this is another kit that open some doors. Now, aircraft has been a weak spot for me in a serious kind of way, but this is the first one that turned out in a way that I like. I really like the way it turned out. Let's just say it's my first successful aircraft kit. And it's a perfect no, but it's on the way. I'm getting there. Now, some of the things about this kit, it does have the in the cockpit, and you may not be able to see it on the video. Let me see if I can zoom in. Okay, the cockpit there, hopefully you can see it. There are photo etch instrument panels, side panels, extra parts. The seat belts are photo etch, made out of brass. Kind of weird, but they work pretty well, and they're all pre-colored, pre-painted. So they're just ready to go in, and it all fit together really well. So it looks good, and you know, the cockpit, it's kind of a bummer because it's packed in there and you can't really see it, but it's in there and it looks pretty decent. So that part of it turned out nicely. Then I did the paint job in the colors of Franz von Vera, and he was the only German POW to escape from the British and get back to Germany to continue fighting, and that's what he did. So I used his markings because I find his story incredibly interesting. One of the unique features of his aircraft is the front cowling had no mottling on it, you know, any of the light spray, and you may not be able to see it because I did it really lightly, so that's what it showed in the deal, and maybe a little too light, but there's, like, you know, light sprays of upper surface colors along the sides, but not on the cowling. Now the cowling, if I had to do over again, I would have made this a little bit lighter than the rest of the gray on the aircraft, the blue gray, but whatever, it worked out. What else was special? Oh, the Profi pack also comes with a masking set, so you can mask the canopy and the windscreen for painting. It makes it a lot easier. I used the chipping technique, the hairspray technique, for chipping around the fuel fillers, the gun bay doors, and the walkway where crew and the pilot would be walking on the aircraft for service. Didn't go real heavy on the weathering. Underneath, the same thing. It's got a lot of decals. They look really nice. But the most important thing about, you know, I did some weathering on the bottom here, but the most important thing about this particular aircraft and what I was able to do with it was weathering on aircraft has always been a big pain for me. I just can't, never have been able to figure out how to do it convincingly. Well, with the Ultimate Modeling Products clay washes, I finally got it. I can get weathering done on here without it looking streaky and weird. It works on the panel lines nicely. It works on the control surfaces nicely, and I like the way it turned out. I'm pleased with this model. I still have ways to go on aircraft, but this is definitely a number of steps in the right direction. And then the last thing I tried, I've never used artist pastels on kits, so I used that for the exhaust streaking and found it to be very effective and very easy to do compared to trying to do it with, say, pigments or an airbrush. So that is the Eduard 1/48 scale BF 109 E4 of Franz von Vera. Alright, and the last kit in my recent completed kits is the Tamiya 1/35 scale SDKFZ 222 in German gray. which was the second kit in my Plastic Models for Beginners series. The big difference between this one and the first kit I did in the beginner series is this one introduced photo etch and a metal barrel. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. A little bit of difference in weathering and stuff, but again, you know, it's an older Tamiya kit, and the only difference between the original release and this one is the fact that this comes with photo etch turret screens and the metal barrel. Other than that, it's pretty much the same. Now in this one, in trying to take it up a notch for beginning modelers, I did some simple modifications. One, the screens, which are made out of photo etch, so I introduced how to use photo etch on a kit, and then I scratch built the fuel can racks. The kit parts were just a solid blob of plastic, not very convincing, so I showed a simple way to use scrap brass, super glue it together, you know, after bending the pieces. I did a complete video on just how to build those racks. You can look that up if you like on my channel. It's pretty simple. And then I did the hairspray. I illustrated how to use the hairspray technique to do chipping on metal items, such as these fuel cans. Chip them up to make them look like they've seen some wear and tear. So I didn't go really crazy on chipping and stuff like that on this one. I just made it a dusty vehicle because it is an African, a German vehicle based in Africa in World War II. So I just went for a dusty effect with some dirt caked up underneath the undercarriage and along the lower portions, and then, you know, just gave it an overall dusty appearance. But this was the second Plastic Models for Beginners kit that I did. So that one was the last kit I completed. So with that, this video, or all of these kits that I've done, this is all the kits I have completed to this point. So let me change my camera angle, talk a little bit, and we'll be done. Alright, so that is the end of part 2 of the models I have built. Again, I want to thank Pete for requesting this, and hopefully, Pete, you find this interesting and it answers any of your questions, and I hope it's interesting for others, and you know, gives you kind of an indication of not really needing a whole lot of skill. You can actually progress and get a little bit better and better building your models, and after a while you turn out some pretty decent stuff. In comparing the very first model, that M4 M4A1 Screaming Meanie, and the Panzer IV Mobilwagen, to the stuff I'm building now, I'm pretty pleased with my progress, and you know, the only way is forward. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and keep an eye peeled for more videos. Again, questions, comments, etc. below. And thanks for joining me on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, and I will see you all later.